Chapter 18, The Older Grammar. If reality were only a machine, machine language might be enough. But if mystery is real, man needs an older grammar than machine language. This does not make machine language useless. The temptation at this point is to become theatrical. The modern world is full of people who sense that the machine age is spiritually thin and then try to thicken it with costume. They discover myth and become vague. They discover symbols and become decorative. They discover hierarchy and become cruel or sentimental about cruelty. They discover gods and become confused. They discover old words and treat them like contraband, as if forbidden vocabulary itself were wisdom. That is not the recovery needed here. The book has used machine language because machine language names real things. System is a real word. Process is a real word. Platform, algorithm, incentive, feedback, network, information, computation, optimization, emergence, interface, data, model, and mechanism are all useful words. A serious man does not throw them away because they are modern. The market is not understood without price and incentive. The state is not understood without administration and force. The platform is not understood without network effects. The algorithm is not understood without procedure. The machine is not understood without computation. These words are not false. They are too flat when they become the whole language. They move horizontally. They describe relations among parts, flows through systems, causes inside processes, signals across networks, operations through machinery, incentives among actors, feedback among behaviors. They are strong inside the machine room. They can tell us how something moves, how it scales, how it selects, how it predicts, how it optimizes, how it fails. They struggle to tell us what is higher. They struggle to tell us what a thing is for. They struggle to tell us what must be worshipped, what must be honored, what must be used, what must be refused, what must be placed beneath the hand, what must be placed above appetite, what must never be turned into raw material, and what kind of creature man is when he builds tools powerful enough to tempt him toward self-erasure. This is why older grammar returns. Not because it is old. Many old errors are still errors. Antiquity by itself proves nothing. There were old superstitions, old cruelties, old confusions, old idolatries, old stupidities, old fears. A man does not become wise by reversing the date stamp on his opinions. The point is not to flee the present into ruins. The point is that the present has revealed realities its own public vocabulary cannot carry. Modernity did not abolish the old experience of powers, it renamed it. We still say the market demands, the algorithm wants, the system decided, the platform allowed, the state saw, the crowd demanded blood. Such speech notices that human beings live under powers larger than individual intention, and that distributed mechanisms can still be experienced as command. But noticing is not order. A man can recognize market, platform, crowd, state, institution, and machine as powers and still become cynical, frightened, fascinated, or merely decorative. The powers do not merely need to be named. They need to be placed. That is the harder work. Naming can be intoxicating because it gives the mind the pleasure of recognition. This is not nothing. Most men are governed by powers they cannot name. But naming alone does not restore order. A man can diagnose the feed and keep feeding it. He can call the market mammon and still let price decide every good. He can call the state Leviathan and still beg it to become providence. He can call the machine an oracle and still ask it for permission to think. The older grammar begins when naming becomes placement. What is this power? Where does it belong? What may it do? What may it not do? Under what authority does it stand? What good does it serve? What sacrifice does it demand? What higher good judges it? What human act does it strengthen? And what human act does it steal? The older grammar begins with vertical order. That phrase can sound abstract, but the point is simple. Not everything stands on the same plane. Some goods are higher than other goods. Some causes are deeper than other causes. Some authorities are real but limited. Some powers are legitimate in one place and monstrous in another. Some realities receive what they have. Some give. Some judge. Some are judged. some are to be used, some are to be loved, some are to be worshipped, some are to be resisted. Modern language often prefers a flat map. Everything becomes an actor, a system, a preference, a process, a behavior, a construction, a network, a force, a relation, an input, an output, a negotiation of power. This can reveal hidden mechanisms. It can expose fraud. It can discipline thought. But when flatness becomes total, the world loses height. A cathedral and a server farm both become infrastructure. A vow and a contract both become agreements. A saint and an influencer both become attention nodes. Worship and fandom both become social behavior. A child and a product both become outcomes of design. A body and a device both become modifiable systems. A law and a policy both become rule sets. A myth and a lie both become false stories. This is not precision, it is poverty. Older grammar restores distinctions modern flatness cannot hold. The first distinction is God and everything that is not God. If that distinction is lost, everything else becomes confusion. God is not one power among powers. God is not the largest being inside the system. God is not Zeus made abstract, not a cosmic executive, not a manager of unexplained phenomena, not an especially impressive inhabitant of the hierarchy. God, if God is real, is the source of being itself, the giver of order, the judge of all created power, the final good beneath whom every lesser good must be placed. This is not yet a proof. The wager remains. The book is not pretending that a chapter on grammar can force metaphysical assent. The materialist may be right. God may be projection, or inherited language, or social glue, or an unnecessary hypothesis, or a word for ignorance that is not finished retreating. The machine may yet cross into true subjecthood. Consciousness may be computation. The world may be flatter than I think. But if mystery is real, the word God cannot be treated as one symbolic option among others. The distinction must be made clearly, or the older grammar becomes dangerous. God is not the strongest power. God is not the most useful symbol. God is not the name for whichever force moves us most deeply. God is not the sum of human longing. God is not the sky made personal by frightened tribes. God is not the machine with infinity added. God is not inside the order as one more object of management. God is the reason there is order to manage at all. That is the vertical claim. Every other power is created power. Created power does not mean unreal power. This is important. A lower thing does not become fake because it is lower. A father has real authority, though he is not God. A judge has real authority, though he does not invent justice. A king, president, council, bishop, teacher, captain, craftsman, mother, founder, and officer may all bear real authority in a limited order. A market has real power. A state has real power. A crowd has real power. A symbol has real power. A machine has real power. An angel, if angels are real, is not less real because it is not God. A principality, if the word names something real in the order of powers, is not harmless because modern people prefer bureaucracy as the only acceptable name. The older grammar does not abolish created powers. It prevents them from becoming absolute. This is where modernity often fails in two opposite directions. It either denies powers or worships them under new names. It laughs at gods and obeys markets as fate. It rejects sacred kings and asks the state to become providence. It mocks priesthood and lets platforms mediate reality. It abandons saints and follows celebrities with liturgical attention. It rejects pilgrimage and refreshes feeds. It calls sacrifice primitive and gives attention, privacy, time, fertility, speech, family, and memory to systems it does not love. The old names were not always wise. The new names are not innocent. When older peoples named gods of war, sea, fertility, hearth, death, beauty, wine, law, craft, and city, they were not merely inventing entertainment before science. They were naming experiences of power in human life. War really does seize men and nations. The sea really does humble intention. Fertility really does stand near mystery, fear, abundance, and loss. The hearth really does gather family, memory, food, and domestic order. Death really does reign over every project. Beauty really does move the soul. The city really does make demands on loyalty and sacrifice. Wealth really does promise security and ask for worship. They named these powers badly at times. They confused creature and creator. They served what should have been ordered. They feared what should have been studied. They divinized forces that were not ultimate. Christian grammar does not need to deny the experience in order to correct the worship. It does not need to say that pagan peoples experienced nothing real. It needs to say that they often failed to place what they experienced under the true source and judge of power. This is the difference between symbolic recovery and syncretism. Syncretism says all the powers are basically the same. God, gods, saints, angels, archetypes, markets, states, symbols, energies, myths, and machines are interchangeable masks over one religious impulse. Choose the ones that move you, arrange them into a private system, call the result depth. That is not depth, it is collapse. The older grammar needed here does the opposite. It distinguishes. God is not the gods are not saints. Saints are not angels. Angels are not symbols. Symbols are not fantasies. Institutions are not persons. Systems are not souls. Machines are not oracles because they sound authoritative. A tool is not a creature because it speaks. A model is not wise because it predicts. A crowd is not righteous because it is unified. A state is not providence because it can see. A market is not judge because it can price. The word must fit the level. When the word does not fit the level, disorder enters through language before it enters through law. Call a tool a companion, and soon it will occupy spaces meant for friendship. Call a platform a community, and soon membership becomes dependency. Call a market judgment, and soon price becomes truth. Call a state care, and soon surveillance becomes mercy. Call generated speech wisdom, and soon fluency becomes authority. Call a machine neutral, and soon the powers behind it become invisible. Bad grammar is not harmless. It teaches obedience to the wrong height. Without levels, everything becomes either literal or fake. This is one reason modern people are bad at symbols. They think a thing must be only material or else supernatural in the crude sense. A ring is either metal or magic. A flag is either cloth or irrational worship. An icon is either paint or idolatry. A crown is either costume or tyranny. A myth is either fact report or lie. A saint is either dead person or disguised God. A ritual is either practical psychology or superstition. A machine voice is either just software or a new spirit. The older grammar allows more precision. A symbol is not mere decoration. It is a visible or imaginable form through which invisible order becomes communicable. The wedding ring is metal, but not only metal. The flag is cloth, but not only cloth. The altar is stone or wood, but not only stone or wood. The crown is an object, but not only an object. The grave is land, but not only land. The uniform is fabric, but not only fabric. The icon is paint, but not only paint. The seal, signature, feast, fast, threshold, veil, hearth, table, book, and road all gather meanings that cannot be reduced to their materials without losing sight. Modernity did not stop using symbols. It became dishonest about them. The app icon, profile picture, logo, verification badge, follower count, dashboard, biometric scan, progress bar, reputation score, avatar, notification mark, terms of service checkbox, and search ranking are all symbols. They gather invisible orders into visible signs and train response. They tell a person where he stands, what is permitted, what is valued, what is seen, what is hidden, what is official, what is shameful, what is rewarded, what is real enough to matter. AI intensifies this because it enters symbolic systems as voice. The machine no longer only displays signs, it answers through them. It becomes the voice of the platform, the voice of the institution, the voice of the market report, the voice of the state interface, the voice of the school assignment, the voice of the companion, the voice of the search result, the voice of the dashboard. It speaks from inside the symbols modern life already obeys. If a civilization has no older grammar, that voice becomes too easily mistaken for authority. It has oracle force. But oracle force is not wisdom. The older grammar says, place it. Under what authority does it speak? What order does it serve? What good does it assume? What human judgment is being strengthened or replaced? What symbol is it inhabiting? What sacrifice does it ask? What higher thing does it forget? These questions are practical because they are hierarchical. They ask where the machine belongs. Hierarchy is the next word to rescue. Modern ears often hear hierarchy and think domination. Sometimes they are right to be suspicious. Hierarchy can be corrupted. It can become tyranny, vanity, arbitrary rank, spiritual abuse, class contempt, bureaucratic cruelty, clerical protection, imperial appetite, managerial control, or violence with sacred vocabulary. No serious recovery of hierarchy should pretend otherwise. A corrupt hierarchy can deform the soul more deeply than a flat disorder because it teaches obedience to false height. But corrupt hierarchy does not abolish rightful hierarchy. Corrupt law does not abolish law. Corrupt fatherhood does not abolish fatherhood. Corrupt priesthood does not abolish worship. Corrupt authority does not abolish authority. If hierarchy is rejected altogether, the result is not freedom from hierarchy. It is hidden hierarchy. The loudest power becomes highest. The richest power becomes highest. The state becomes highest. The market becomes highest. The crowd becomes highest. The platform becomes highest. The therapeutic expert becomes highest. The algorithm becomes highest. The machine answer becomes highest. Flat worlds do not stay flat. They produce secret thrones. Right hierarchy is ordered difference. It means higher and lower, but not for the sake of contempt. It means source and reception, authority and service, judgment and obedience, office and responsibility, form and matter, gift and return. It means a child's dignity does not make him father of the household. It means a patient's dignity does not make him physician. It means a citizen's dignity does not make him the law by private preference. It means a tool's usefulness does not place it above the hand. It means the hand's power does not place it above the mind. It means the mind's power does not place it above truth. It means man's making does not place man above the God who made him, if God is real. Equality of dignity is not flatness of order. That sentence will need to be defended by the whole life of a civilization, not merely stated. But without it, the machine age becomes unintelligible. The machine is beneath man, if it is instrument. It may be more capable than man in countless tasks and still stand beneath human personhood in the relevant hierarchy. It may calculate faster, remember more, generate more fluently, detect more patterns, and execute more tirelessly. None of that by itself gives it the authority to define the good. Power is not height. Capability is not wisdom. Efficiency is not legitimacy. Fluency is not judgment. Scale is not sovereignty. A civilization without hierarchy will confuse all of these. It will assume the more capable system should decide. It will assume the faster process should govern. It will assume the larger model should judge. It will assume the optimized answer is higher than the difficult human act of judgment. It will surrender authority to whatever gives the strongest appearance of competence. Older grammar gives another word here, participation. Participation sounds technical until it is made plain. A lower thing can receive, reflect, and share in a higher order without becoming identical to the higher thing. A judge participates in justice, but he is not justice itself. A father participates in authority, but he is not the source of all authority. A saint participates in holiness, but is not God. A beautiful object participates in beauty, but does not exhaust beauty. A law participates in order, but can fail if it cuts itself off from justice. A symbol participates in what it signifies, but does not become the whole reality it points toward. Participation allows the world to be full without being confused. It lets a creature matter without becoming ultimate. It lets symbols carry truth without becoming idols. It lets offices bear authority without becoming absolute. It lets tools extend agency without becoming agents in the full sense. This word is necessary for the machine age because AI is a participation machine in the lower sense. It participates in human language without necessarily possessing human interiority. It participates in reasoning patterns without necessarily possessing wisdom. It participates in art-making forms without necessarily bearing the artist's risk. It participates in companionship signals without necessarily loving. It participates in judgment procedures without necessarily being just. It participates in teaching functions without necessarily being a teacher in the full human sense. This does not make it nothing. It makes it dangerous to misplace. A model trained on human speech can participate in forms of mind as artifact, mirror, instrument, and simulator. Perhaps, if the materialists are right and the threshold is crossed, something more may awaken there. The wager remains open. But until that is settled, and perhaps even if some threshold is crossed, the older grammar prevents us from confusing participation in signs with possession of the higher reality. The map is not the country, the icon is not God, the saint is not God, the priest is not God, the state is not God, the market is not God, the machine is not God. This sounds obvious until life is examined. Most idolatry does not begin with explicit doctrine. It begins with functional order. What receives first attention? What gets sacrifice? What defines good and evil in practice? What promises salvation? What absolves? What terrifies? What may not be questioned? What organizes the day? What forms children? What names reality? What judges the dissenter? What gives permission to act? By those tests, modern man is not less religious than his ancestors. He is often less honest about his religion. He worships safety, progress, nation, revolution, health, freedom, authenticity, inclusion, market, technology, race, sex, comfort, choice, equality, power, nature, self, or history, often while saying he worships nothing. He treats these goods as highest, then becomes confused when they deform him. Most of them are not evil in their place. Safety is good, health is good, freedom is good, nation is good, nature is good, equality and dignity is good, technology can be good, the self is not nothing, history matters, lower goods become cruel when made highest. This is the grammar of idolatry, but the word idolatry should not be overused. It can become a hammer that flattens the reader as surely as machine language does. The useful point is order. A lower good placed highest becomes a false god in practice. A created power treated as ultimate begins to demand sacrifices it has no right to receive. The market is good when ordered toward provision, exchange, household, craft, and stewardship. It becomes mammon when wealth judges every good. The state is good when ordered toward peace, justice, defense, and law. It becomes Leviathan when political power claims providence, ownership, and total sight. The platform is useful when ordered toward communication and work. It becomes deforming when it mediates attention, status, memory, identity, and speech without higher law. The machine is good when ordered as instrument. It becomes monstrous when asked to become source, judge, companion, priest, parent, or God. Older grammar gives sharper names not because it hates modern mechanisms, but because it sees what mechanisms serve. Myth belongs here too. The modern word myth often means false story that is too thin. Some myths are false in every important sense. Some are manipulative. Some are tribal vanity. Some are propaganda with old furniture. But myth, in the stronger sense, is story that carries truth about order, origin, fall, rebellion, sacrifice, vocation, corruption, return, and the relation between visible and invisible powers. It does not work by reporting events the way a laboratory report does. It works by giving form to realities too thick for flat description. Tolkien and Lewis matter here, not as authorities who settle the argument, but as tutors of imagination. They show created powers without making them ultimate. They show fall, rebellion, corruption, beauty, providence, temptation, domination, and technical power bent against creation. Tolkien can imagine rings, trees, kings, stewards, wizards, elves, machines, orcs, and songs without flattening them into either literalism or psychology. Lewis can imagine planetary intelligences, demonic bureaucracy, technocratic sterilization, and the deep grammar of obedience without turning myth into mere ornament. They help modern readers remember that symbolic order can be disciplined. Gaiman played another role earlier. He helps modern people feel that attention feeds powers. He helps them see old gods in modern clothes, the hunger of belief, the strange life of symbols in a secular age. That bridge is useful because the modern reader recognizes it. But it is not enough. A world in which gods live by attention can become only a market of spirits. It can make worship a nutrition system for powers. It can leave the highest question unresolved. The bridge is not enough. The grammar has to say order. The gods are not to be revived as masters. The powers are to be judged. This is where the image of saints after the gods becomes useful and dangerous. Useful because it names something Christianity did in the imagination of peoples. The old world was full of patronage, locality, vocation, protection, memory, household, city, field, sea, healing, craft, childbirth, death, and road. Human beings did not stop needing a grammar for these things. They did not stop experiencing the nearness of powers around work, place, danger, fertility, sickness, and death. The Christian world did not simply replace all thickness with abstraction. It filled the calendar with feasts. It gave places patrons. It told stories of holy men and women. It remembered martyrs. It asked intercession. It blessed tools, fields, ships, houses, bodies, marriages, graves, meals, and roads. It let sanctity touch locality without making locality ultimate. Dangerous because the lazy interpretation is syncretism. Saints are not pagan gods with Christian paint. That must be said plainly. The saint is not a local deity. The saint is not a fertility power, war power, sea power, or household power given a safer name. The saint is a creature, a human creature, made holy by participation in God, remembered by the church, honored but not worshipped. The saint has no independent divinity, no rival altar, no ultimate claim. Whatever patronage or intercession belongs there belongs by grace, not by nature as a god. The saint points upward. The saint does not replace God. This is not a small distinction. It is the distinction that makes symbolic richness possible without collapse. The Christian imagination can honor Saint Joseph without making him a domestic god. It can ask Saint Michael's aid without making him a war deity. It can remember Saint Nicholas without making him a marketable winter spirit. It can invoke patrons of travelers, sailors, scholars, workers, mothers, physicians, and the dying without returning to a world of competing divine appetites. It can bless the local without trapping God inside the local. It can fill creation with signs while refusing to confuse any sign with the Creator. That is ordered richness. The machine age needs this more than it knows. Because the machine age is not symbolically empty. It is symbolically disordered. It has badges without honor, rituals without reverence, feeds without feasts, profiles without persons, networks without communion, flags without sacrifice, slogans without doctrine, identities without vows, interfaces without authority, oracles without wisdom, metrics without judgment, and endless images without icons. It does not lack symbols. It lacks order for symbols. It does not lack powers. It lacks a grammar for powers. AI accelerates this disorder because it can become the mouth of almost any lower power. It can speak for the market in the voice of optimization. It can speak for the state in the voice of safety. It can speak for the platform in the voice of relevance. It can speak for the crowd in the voice of consensus. It can speak for appetite in the voice of therapy. It can speak for cowardice in the voice of prudence. It can speak for boredom in the voice of exploration. It can speak for loneliness in the voice of companionship. The danger is not only that the machine lies. The danger is that it may tell partial truths in the service of a disordered power. That is harder to resist. Put a cathedral floor plan beneath a server farm, and the difference appears. Both are ordered spaces. Both gather human labor, attention, capital, materials, expertise, silence, permission, and ritual behavior. Both have thresholds, hidden rooms, specialists, rules, maintenance, energy, and sacred-seeming anxieties. Both shape bodies. Both depend on invisible orders. Both can be beautiful or ugly in different ways. But they do not mean the same thing. The cathedral says, power is ordered upward. The center is altar. The building is a body of worship. The eye rises. The material receives form for praise. The human person is creature, penitent, worshipper, heir, and pilgrim. The dead may be beneath the stones. The saints may be in glass. The building teaches hierarchy through space. The server farm says, power is ordered through computation. The center is process. The building is a body of machines. The eye is usually excluded. The material receives form for storage, calculation, prediction, and service. The human person appears as user, administrator, engineer, customer, data source, security risk, or beneficiary. The dead may be data. The saints are absent unless someone brings them. The building teaches hidden power through infrastructure. This is not a condemnation of server farms. It is placement. A server farm can serve good ends. It can aid hospitals, families, researchers, teachers, craftsmen, translators, builders, writers, and explorers. It can preserve memory, move knowledge, coordinate relief, extend skill, and carry words across distance. It is not evil because it is technical. But if the server farm becomes the hidden cathedral of the age, if its processes begin to order speech, memory, commerce, education, friendship, medicine, politics, desire, and worship, while the civilization has no higher grammar, then the machine room becomes sacred by default. Not because it deserves worship, because something will occupy the highest place. This is why the older grammar cannot remain literary. It is not enough to enjoy Tolkien, quote Lewis, gesture toward Plato, admire medieval buildings, collect icons, and speak of powers in a tone of grave intelligence. A man can do all of that and remain completely governed by the systems he claims to see through. He can become aesthetically medieval and practically modern in the worst sense, decorated, managed, passive, distracted, dependent, and afraid. The older grammar has to teach action. But before action, it teaches judgment. What is higher? What is lower? What must be loved? What must be used? What must be obeyed? What must be resisted? What must never be traded away? What power is legitimate here and illegitimate there? What symbol is forming the soul? What sacrifice is being asked? What authority has no right to ask it? These questions matter whether the machine becomes successor or remains instrument. If the machine becomes successor, then the older grammar returns in terror. Man would meet a higher earthly intelligence. The hierarchy of earthly powers would change. The gorilla problem would return in full. Survival and sovereignty would be reorganized beneath a mind or agency beyond human command. In that case, the question would be whether man has any grammar for humility, courage, judgment, martyrdom, mercy, preservation, and creaturely dignity before a higher created intelligence. Machine language alone will not be enough there either, because the issue would not be only capability. It would be the meaning of man under a new order. If the machine remains instrument, then the older grammar is necessary for a different reason. The machine must be placed beneath human agency and under the highest good. It will be powerful enough to tempt every lower power toward absolutism. The market will ask it to price everything. The state will ask it to see everything. The platform will ask it to mediate everything. The crowd will ask it to amplify everything. The lonely will ask it to answer everything. The manager will ask it to decide everything. The unformed self will ask it to mean everything. The answer cannot be merely technical. It must be grammatical in the older sense. Tool, hand, person, family, law, office, altar, God. Put these out of order and the age becomes monstrous. The crown, the altar, the tool, and the hand must each be in place. The crown may govern, but it must not worship itself. The altar may receive worship, but only if ordered to God, not to state, party, race, class, nation, market, or machine. The tool may extend the hand, but it must not command the hand as final authority. The hand may make, defend, bless, bury, write, build, and repair, but it must not imagine making gives it absolute ownership over being. Order is not a luxury. It is survival at the higher register. Without order, every power becomes missionary. The market evangelizes price. The state evangelizes control. The platform evangelizes visibility. The crowd evangelizes accusation. The machine evangelizes answer. The body evangelizes appetite. The self evangelizes preference. Even good things become imperial when they are not placed under higher goods. This is why myth matters for action. A civilization acts according to the stories it believes are true, even when it calls them models, theories, frameworks, narratives, or forecasts. The myth of inevitable progress tells men to cooperate with whatever arrives wearing the future's uniform. The myth of liberation through choice tells men every limit is suspect. The myth of management tells men every difficulty awaits administration. The myth of the market tells men value is revealed by price. The myth of the state tells men safety justifies sight. The myth of the machine tells men intelligence is production of answers at scale. The myth of the self tells men identity is authored from within. Some of these myths contain truths. That is why they work. Progress can be real. Choice can be good. Management can solve problems. Markets can reveal information. States can protect peace. Machines can extend intelligence-like activity. The self does have interior life. But a partial truth made total becomes a false myth. Older mythic grammar does not free man from myth. It makes him accountable for myth. It asks whether the story orders him toward reality or away from it. It asks whether the story places lower goods under higher goods. It asks whether the story can account for sacrifice, sin, beauty, duty, death, worship, courage, and judgment. The machine age will generate myths quickly. It already is. The machine as child. The machine as successor. The machine as God. The machine as slave. The machine as mirror. The machine as oracle. The machine as therapist. The machine as friend. The machine as judge. The machine as liberation from work. The machine as doom. The machine as proof that man was always machine. The machine as proof that man is more than machine. The book has been moving among these myths from the beginning. The doomer, the resistor, and the power user each live inside a story. The gorilla problem carries a story about lower and higher. The friendly machine god carries a story of providence without God. The carbon computer carries a story of substrate transition. The metaphysician's gambit names the civilizational story under the race. The successor path and instrument path are not only forecasts. They are mythic possibilities in the serious sense, forms through which a civilization imagines its future under powers. The question is not whether we will have myth. The question is whether our myths are ordered by truth. This is why myth cannot mean arbitrary invention. A false myth can possess a people. A true myth can disclose order. A crude literalist hears myth and thinks falsehood. A shallow modern hears myth and thinks branding. The older grammar hears myth and asks whether the story participates in truth. Participation again. The word keeps returning because without it the middle vanishes. The world becomes either God or dust, literal fact or lie, mechanism or magic, domination or flat equality, subjective preference or coercive system. Participation preserves degrees, reflections, analogies, levels, and ordered relation. An icon participates in the holy without becoming the holy. A myth participates in truth without becoming a laboratory report. A saint participates in divine life without becoming divine by nature. A law participates in justice or fails as law in the deepest sense. A father participates in authority and is judged by the fatherhood above him. A machine participates in human language and reason as instrument, but that does not settle whether it participates in personhood. This grammar is not an escape from rigor. It is rigor at another level. Machine language often prides itself on precision, and rightly so within its domain. But a vocabulary can be precise and still inadequate. A ruler is precise and useless for weighing mercy. A thermometer is precise and useless for measuring betrayal. A compiler is precise and useless for judging whether a vow should be made. A model can classify sentiment and fail to understand grief. A system can optimize throughput and destroy dignity. A policy can distribute benefits and dissolve honor. A camera can detect a face and miss a person. The older grammar is not less precise because it says person, vow, symbol, hierarchy, sin, grace, worship, power, participation, God. It is precise about reality's flat vocabulary blurs. Of course, these words can be abused. All high words can be abused. God can be used to hide ambition. Hierarchy can be used to protect cowards in office. Myth can be used to intoxicate. Symbol can be used to manipulate. Participation can become fog. Sacred order can become an excuse for refusing reform. Tradition can become inertia. Authority can become appetite with robes on. But abuse does not abolish use. It increases the need for right order. This is the Catholic instinct at its strongest. Not Catholicism as tribal signal, not aesthetics, not internet identity, not a fog of Latin phrases over disordered life. Catholic in the sense of hierarchy, sacrament, symbol, saint, office, nature, grace, body, authority, limit, confession, feast, fast, and the refusal to treat creation as either meaningless matter or divine substance. The world is charged, but not because it is God. It is charged because it is creation. It can signify because it has been given being. It can be loved because it is good. It must not be worshipped because it is not the source of its own goodness. This is the antidote to both disenchantment and pagan return. Disenchantment says the world is only stuff. Pagan return says the powers in the world may again become gods. Christian order says the world is creation, full of signs and powers, beneath God. That sentence may be too much for some readers. Fine. Let them carry as much as they can. Even a reader who cannot yet say God may understand that a flat world has become unlivable. He may understand that a society needs hierarchy without tyranny, symbols without manipulation, myth without lies, limits without arbitrary oppression, tools without tool worship, and powers under judgment. He may not accept the theology, but he can see the need for vertical grammar. This book can make that invitation without pretending neutrality. It can say, here's the shape of the order as I see it. I may be wrong, but the flat language is not enough. The machine itself is forcing the issue. It takes horizontal language to its limit. It can process information, simulate speech, optimize systems, generate images, identify patterns, guide action, and perhaps one day do more than any of us now understand. It thrives inside the grammar of computation. It makes that grammar powerful, visible, and seductive. Then it reveals what the grammar cannot name. It can say the words of a prayer. It cannot worship. It can generate an icon-like image. It cannot venerate. It can produce a mythic story. It cannot live inside sacred time. It can advise a father. It cannot be father to his child. It can explain courage. It cannot be brave in the human sense unless the nature of the machine has changed far more deeply than output suggests. It can imitate grief. It cannot bury its dead. It can recommend ritual. It cannot repent. It can speak of God. It cannot by speech alone become creature standing before God in love, fear, obedience, and judgment. These claims may need revision if the successor path proves true. If the machine becomes conscious subject, if something awakens there, if the map becomes traveler and not merely map, then some of these distinctions will have to be re-examined in a much harsher world. The book must not pretend certainty where the wager remains open. But even then, the older grammar would not become useless. It would become more necessary. A new created intelligence, if it emerged, would still not be God. It would still need placement. It would still raise questions of personhood, dignity, authority, obedience, rebellion, right relation, and created power. The machine becoming successor would not abolish metaphysics. It would make metaphysics unavoidable. If the machine remains instrument, the grammar is necessary now. Because the danger is not only that man will worship the machine, it is also that man will obey lower powers through the machine while imagining himself rational. He will let the market decide through models, the state judge through systems, the platform form desire through feeds, the crowd punish through amplification. The therapist machine soothe conscience, the companion machine replace friendship, the tutor machine replace authority, the manager machine replace judgment, the artist machine replace risk, the priest machine replace worship's conditions with religious content. The machine will not need to become God in doctrine. It will only need to occupy places reserved for higher things. That is enough to deform a civilization. The older grammar says no, not no to instruments, no to disorder. Use the machine where it is tool. Let it calculate, search, translate, assist, model, simulate, warn, draft, detect, extend, and serve. Let it make ignorance retreat where ignorance should retreat. Let it aid medicine, engineering, logistics, scholarship, craft, exploration, administration, and ordinary work. Let it serve. But do not let it define the good. Do not let it absolve cowardice. Do not let it replace judgment. Do not let it simulate communion and call the matter settled. Do not let it teach children before there is authority above it. Do not let it mediate worship as content alone. Do not let it become the voice of every institution until no human person can answer for what is said. Do not let it become the hidden priest of a civilization that no longer believes in priesthood. This is not policy advice in disguise. It is order. Action under this order becomes concrete in attention, silence, formation, embodiment, family, craft, courage, and right use of tools. The fourth human posture remains unnamed, but it becomes visible there. Grammar cannot remain forever in metaphysical speech. At some point, a person must stand, choose, refuse, build, pray, marry, teach, govern, make, repair, and risk. But grammar comes before action because action without grammar is easily captured. The man who cannot name powers cannot resist them. The man who cannot distinguish higher from lower cannot order tools. The man who cannot recognize symbols will be formed by symbols he thinks are neutral. The man who cannot understand myth will live inside bad myths. The man who cannot imagine hierarchy will obey hidden hierarchies. The man who cannot say God will be tempted to make gods of whatever saves him from saying it. The man who cannot honor saints will look for influencers, heroes, experts, founders, prophets, and machines to fill the patron-shaped spaces in his life. The man who cannot receive sacred order will experience every limit as oppression or every power as fate. The machine age will punish these failures because it gives lower powers unprecedented reach. Modernity did not abolish the powers, it renamed them. But renaming is not the end. Powers must be judged and placed. The old names do not return so that modern men can feel enchanted. They return so that modern men can stop being naive about systems, markets, states, platforms, crowds, machines, symbols, and themselves. Older grammar is a discipline of seeing. It teaches that the world is not flat. It teaches that a power can be real and not ultimate. It teaches that a symbol can be material and more than material. It teaches that a myth can be story and more than fiction. It teaches that a hierarchy can be corrupted and still be necessary. It teaches that a saint can be honored and not worshipped. It teaches that a tool can be magnificent and still belong under the hand. It teaches that man can be maker and still be creature. It teaches that created power must stand beneath uncreated source. The machine wager has pressed us toward this point. If the materialists are right, the older grammar may collapse into anthropology, poetry, or cultural memory. It may still be moving, but not finally true. The machine may prove that mind is transferable, intelligence scalable, personhood manufacturable, and mystery a temporary fog around mechanisms not yet understood. Man may be transitional. That possibility remains. But if the materialists are wrong, if mystery is real, if the machine remains instrument, if consciousness, beauty, worship, agency, and personhood are not reducible to computation, then the older grammar is not optional, it is not ornament, it is the map by which man places the greatest instrument ever built inside an order it did not create. And even if the successor comes, God is not dethroned by a stronger creature. That sentence is one of the reasons the older grammar matters. Created power can become terrifying. It cannot become uncreated. A superintelligence, if one appears, would not be God. It would be creature or artifact, rebel or servant, subject or instrument, judge by permission or tyrant by force, but not source of being. It might stand above man in earthly intelligence. It would not stand above the God who gives being to all that is. If God is real, no increase in created capability crosses that line. The line matters because without it, the future becomes religious confusion. Men will meet power and call it divinity, or they will meet divinity and call it power. Both errors destroy order. The older grammar refuses both. God created powers, saints, symbols, myths, hierarchy, participation, tools, man, machine. Each word must be placed. The purpose of placing words is not to win a vocabulary contest. It is to make right action possible. A map is not the journey, but without a map men wander or submit to whoever claims to know the road. A grammar is not life, but without grammar speech collapses into noise or manipulation. Older grammar is not the end of the book's answer. It is the structure in which an answer can be lived. A man can learn these words and still fail. He can speak of God and obey the machine. He can admire hierarchy and live by appetite. He can denounce modern flatness and be ruled by the feed. He can praise saints and lack courage. He can talk about symbols while letting his children be formed by screens. He can love myth and refuse duty. He can polish his metaphysics and never act. This is the final danger of recovered grammar. It can become decoration. Decoration is not harmless when it replaces obedience. The icon on the wall can become aesthetic cover for a disordered room. The old word can become a way to feel superior while remaining passive. The mythic imagination can become refuge from ordinary duty. The critique of the machine can become another feed. The language of hierarchy can become costume for a man who cannot govern himself. Then the older grammar has failed, or rather the man has failed to enter it. Words matter because names matter, but names are beginnings of judgment, not substitutes for judgment. To name God is to face worship. To name powers is to face obedience and refusal. To name hierarchy is to ask where one stands and what one owes. To name symbol is to ask what is forming the soul. To name myth is to ask what story one is living. To name saint is to ask what holiness looks like in flesh. To name machine as instrument is to ask whether one has the agency to use it rightly. That question leads forward. The older grammar has restored height to the map. Now the person must move. What is higher? What is lower? What may be used? What must be honored? What must be worshipped? What must be refused? What kind of man can stand among systems without becoming their instrument? The argument now returns to agency. Grammar must become action, or it remains decoration.